welcome back to Miss Ming's channel. This is Miss Ming. In my channel, I do a lot of makeup videos, vlog videos, cooking videos, study with me videos, and fitness videos. If these content interest you, please consider subscribe to my channel. Alright, so this video is a part 2 of the Learn English video series. You guys seem to enjoy the video for speaking English skills, so that's why I'm filming a second part of the video, how to improve English writing skills. Are you ready? Let's get started. So first, if you missed the first video, I would like to briefly introduce myself. I have a master's degree in teaching English as a second language, and currently I'm in my last year of my Ph.D. program in the field of education. So my Ph.D. is in culture, literacy, and language, specializing in second language acquisition, language testing, and my primary research method is quantitative research and mixed methods. Alright, so let's get started. So in my previous video, I talked about how I improved my apparently English speaking skills are very important if you are studying abroad or if you try to have business communications and things like that. But one of the other important skills to survive in US colleges or in the other English speaking countries is the writing skill. Before I start, I want you to think about, please comment down below, who hates writing papers in English? That's me, right? But also, why do you hate English writing? Why do you hate writing papers? Please comment down below, right? So today I'll be talking about how I improved my English writing skills. So as a graduate student, I encountered a lot of challenges when I first started my graduate studies in the United States. I've been in the United States for 6.5 years. Thanks to a lot of the strategies I learned throughout the courses, I was able to maintain a 4.0 GPA. Actually, the writing portion of my studies was very challenging. Every class has a term paper or several term papers. So it is so important to improve your English writing skills because it is directly affecting your grades and GPA. Alright, so let's cut to the chase and start talking about how I improved writing. Tip number 1, a good writer is a good reader. And before you even start planning your paper or writing your paper, make sure that you look for some good examples. And by that, I meant you can either go online and Google some examples of the assignments, or you can directly ask your professor. And I do recommend that you directly ask your professor, either if the professor can share some of the model papers from the previous courses, or you can ask for resources that were online. For example, one of the resources I found very helpful is the Purdue Writing Lab, and I'll put the link down below. And also, like, sometimes on the internet there are some good examples and bad examples. It is very important to ask your professor, like, to give you a sense of what he or she is asking. So tip number 1, a good writer is a good reader. Make sure you find good examples, not just one example, but good examples. As you know, there is no one way to good writing. There are multiple ways, but there are some commonalities that the good writing samples, the good writing share, and that's what you are looking for. So first, find a model and read it, study it, like what are the conventions in this genre, like either you're writing a research paper, a reflection paper, and things like that. So make sure that you look for examples. Second of all, research shows that engage in a writing process. So research shows that what discriminates novice writers and expert writers is that expert writers, when they write, they engage in a series of steps when they're writing, which include three major stages: planning stage, composing stage, and revising stage. And my own doctoral dissertation is on second language writing. And through my observation, even in my own study, I realized that people who have people who achieved a high TOEFL writing scores and IELTS TOEFL writing scores, when they were participating in the study, they usually have a plan. And after they compose the paper, they usually go back and revise it. But novice writers, they just start writing. They felt like, I just don't want to stop my flow in my head. I just want to keep writing. And at the end, they only fix some of the grammatical errors instead of making big changes. So now I will elaborate what is a good writing process that will help you in terms of writing. Okay, so the first stage is planning stage. So planning stage, as you know, is to plan your writing, and usually you need an outline. And I know some of the second language writers may not come from a background that outlining was a common practices in writing. So, and a lot of L2 writers even perceive outlining as unnecessary, because in English it's very clear that we have a big macro structure, which is beginning, middle, and conclusion. And a lot of times writers may not feel like, I don't think I need an outline, because it's just the structure, the beginning, the middle, and the conclusion. Why do I need outline? But here's the thing. When you're writing an outline, you're not just writing 3 sentences, beginning, middle, and the end. That is not a good example of outlining. So what it means by outlining is to first think about the content and ideas. So if you're writing an argumentative essay or persuasive essay, so first think about your thesis statement, and also think about 3 claims or 2 claims, and think about the evidence that are supporting the claim, and also 1 counterclaim. What is your counter argument? And think about the evidence that supports the counter argument and how you transit back. And finally, in conclusion, what is the key point of your paper? So you're not just saying, oh, beginning, middle, and end. You're actually planning specifically the ideas and content in your paper. And in terms of the research paper, planning goes long way. So when I plan, I usually, for example, the literature review section, if it's a mixed methods paper about language testing, in the first section, I will talk about assessment of writing. And then the second section, I will talk about the use of computer writing and paper writing, and the third section I'll talk about mixed methods. And that is just the macro plan. In each section, I'll have 3 paragraphs and plan what each paragraph is talking about. And after this macro planning, when you're writing each paragraph, you need to first identify the references that contribute to the ideas in each paragraph. So you're not driven by the references like the other research articles. You're driven by your own plan, but you are filling out the references that support your claim in each paragraph, and I will list a set of references in each section. Okay, so it is not about, beginning, middle, conclusion. It is about the content, the ideas, and also how you transit from one paragraph to the other paragraph. So you have to think about the connections between paragraphs and the connections between the sections. So when you're planning, before you even start, you're actually thinking ahead, like what the content is about in the whole passage and article you write. Okay, so that is the planning stage. In the composing stage, which is the second stage, so usually when I compose, I just write along according to my plan, right? So I will read the paper, I will compose, and sometimes as second language writer, you don't know a lot of words, you get stumbled on a lot of the words that you don't know, that you can't find a perfect word for there. So when you're composing, don't just stop looking for words, because when you're composing, you don't want to stop your flow. So I would just keep writing. If there's any vocabulary that I struggle with, I will just take a note, find a word for this. So I'll put a synonym there, and then I'll just keep writing, and I'll highlight the places that I'm missing. And sometimes when I feel like, I don't know, those 2 sentences, they don't connect together, I'll just make a note, make a transition sentence, or transit to the next paragraph, things like that. And later, when I revise, I will just take my time to really think about this area. So usually at composing stage, I just go with my flow and go with my plan. And make a lot of notes and highlights and color-coded everything to myself. The sun is out. Oh my god, like when you're using natural sunlight and there's a cloud just flying, blocking the sun. Okay, the sun is back. Alright, so that is the composing stage. The third stage is revising stage. And a lot of the L2 writers, they only revise in terms of the grammar, vocabulary, errors, spellings. Those are not revising. Those are called editing. Right? So error corrections are not revising. When you revise, you actually have to revise both the content, organization structure, and also editing. So usually when I revise, after I compose my paper, I will take a day off or take like a 1 hour break, because you want to go back to your paper with a fresh mind. Because a lot of times when you write, you think you're making it clear, but then the readers don't actually get your logic. If you just, after you compose, you go back immediately, you'll feel like everything makes sense. So have you ever looked back the paper you wrote maybe like a month ago, a year ago, you're like, what am I talking about? Right? So when I was composing them, that makes sense. I thought it was a perfect paper, but now, meh, I don't get it. That's because like right after you compose, your mind is still in your flow, in your logic. So you don't see your own problem. Somebody just rang the bell. I always get nervous when people ring the bell. Sorry. Alright, so, but in terms of revising, you need to take like a 1 day break or either even a 1 hour break, watch something else, watch YouTube, watch my video. Like watch something entertaining or eat your lunch, eat your dinner, and then go back to your paper and then revise. When you're revising, there's 3 things you need to look at. The first thing is content. So are you addressing the prompt? Are you addressing the assignment requirement? Are you really making a good point about whatever you want to write? So the first thing is to look at the content. And sometimes your content is lacking. You have to add 1 paragraph addressing one of the questions. You have to add 1 paragraph summarizing more research about other areas. So the first thing you need to look at is the content. The second is the structure of your paper. So by structure, I mean both the macro structure and the micro structure. So the macro structure is the whole structure of the whole passage. Sometimes we tend to start big and conclude small. So your paper has a heavy head, but then a very little tail. You want to avoid that. You want to have an evenly distributed paper. You want your beginning to be good, you have your conclusion to be good, you have your introduction to and the discussion. So they should be well balanced. And of course the middle, the content is like always important. And you don't want one section that has 1 paragraph and this other section has 3 paragraphs. You want to make the sections evenly distributed as well, because when readers read that, like sometimes they felt odd when you have like a lot to talk about one section and nothing to talk about on the other. So the reader, either your professor or the reviewer, they'll feel like maybe you don't have enough knowledge in this area. Make sure the macro structure, the overall organization of your paper is good. You have both beginning and conclusion. You have the introduction, discussion, each section's evenly distributed. That is the macro organization. And also you want to look at the micro organization. So does each paragraph connect to the other? Here's the thing, when readers, they read your paper, it's like reading your mind, right? So think about it. Have you ever talked to someone who, when they talk, they goes here and there, and they're hard to follow? The same thing with paper. So when the readers are reading your paper, if your sentences are not connected, your paragraphs are not connected, then it feels like you're talking to a person who's like here and there. It's not very coherent. It's hard to follow. So a lot of times when we talk, you can actually play with the reaction of your audience, like when they, what you're talking about. When they get lost, you kind of know, and then you kind of revise your story or your speech. But when it comes to writing, sometimes we don't understand how people cannot follow a paper. So, but it's very simple. It's just like the way we talk. So when you're writing your paper, make sure each sentence is connecting to the other, right? And each paragraph is connecting to the other. So make sure that there is some sort of logical relationship between the sentences. If there is no logical connections, you may want to start a new paragraph, or you may want to add a sentence talking about, because assessment of L2 writers is important, that's why it's important to look at the research in this area. So you're connecting one section to another, your readers can actually follow you. Okay, so when you're checking your organization, not only do you check the sections, what it overall macroly looking like, do they look like good, do they look like evenly distributed? Also, you need to make sure that each sentence flows to another. There's a logical connections between the sentences. And if there is not, make sure that you have a explicit connecting transitional sentence between the sentences. And make sure that you transit from paragraph to another paragraph. Now that we already talk about this, and then we talk about that. In the introduction section, you can also put a sentence overviewing the overall structure, the key points of this paper, so that the audiences, they have an idea what you will be talking about, so it's easier for them to follow the structure or the flow of your paper. So the second thing you want to revise is to revise the structure, the macro and microstructure of your paper. And finally, of course, after you revise the content and the structure, you want to revise in terms of the errors. You want to check the vocabulary choice. Are you using the appropriate, accurate vocabulary? And you want to check for the grammar. Is there any grammatical errors? I personally have a lot of grammatical errors in my paper. And also you want to check the spelling and everything. So in that case, I actually suggest you to go to someone else to have a fresh mind to check your grammatical errors and vocabulary choice. Because sometimes, just to be honest, like even if you're an advanced L2 writer, sometimes you always feel like this word means A, but it actually means A minus. So it's not very accurate in terms of expressing your idea. Or sometimes I never knew that vocabulary is an uncountable noun. I didn't know until one of my professor pointed out that, hey, you can't say 5 vocabularies. You have to say 5 vocabulary words or 5 vocabulary. I did not know. So in terms of the editing stage, I would recommend you to go to the writing center or go with a friend, either a native speaker or non-native speaker. At least they can actually question you in terms of some of the choices and some of the errors that you make. And then later you can go back and read it, correct it yourself. Right? So this is the revising stage. Now that we have talked about 2 tips, the first one is a good writer is a good reader. The second one is engage a writing process that helps you make sure you plan, make sure you compose, go with your flow and plan, and make sure you revise in terms of the 3 things. And now we're going to move on to improve your writing fluency. So there is an old saying called practice makes perfect. Without practice, there's no perfection. And of course, practice does not always lead to perfection, but at least you need to establish a writing habit to improve your writing fluency. You need to write every day. That's right, you need to write every day. When I first started my Ph.D. program, my advisor at the time gave me a book as Christmas present. It is called How to Write a Lot. I don't have the book at hand right now with me, so I'll put the link down below. Okay, so in this book, it talks about one assistant professor, how he became very productive in his manuscript publication production. And one of the things he talked about is that you need to establish a writing routine and write every day, and either for 1 hour or 2 hours. It could be in the morning, it could be in the evening, whatever time works for you the best, and whatever time that it can be consistent for you, because some of the students or professors may have children, so they have to take care of the children in the morning, so maybe evening is a better time. But generally speaking, when you just wake up with a fresh mind, usually morning is a better time. So he said in the morning, do not wash your face, do not think about whatever, do not do your makeup, do not waste your time on any of the things. In the morning, make yourself a latte and keep writing. And it really stuck to me that I didn't really have a habit when I started it, and I struggled so much. I was like, oh my god, this paper, maybe the native speakers will finish it within like 5 hours, but of course non-native speakers take a long time to write, and usually I stressed out. So I started my morning writing ritual. So every morning after I wake up, it doesn't matter what time I wake up, I will make myself a latte, sit in front of my double screen computer and start writing. And it doesn't matter what you write. So usually I will write a class paper. And if I finish the class paper for this week, I'll write the class paper for next week. And sometimes you can use the time to plan your paper. Like, for example, you can put the references right under each section, write an outline, and you can also use the time to revise your paper. So it doesn't mean that you have to compose. It could be either planning stage, composing stage, and revising stage. You just keep writing every day. Don't let other people to interfere with your writing time. So on my schedule, it says meeting, so that people wouldn't think that you're actually taking the time yourself. Sometimes when people want to schedule a meeting during my writing time, I would say, no, I have another commitment. So commit to your writing ritual. This is your time and this is your writing time. And I will write whatever the paper for each class, and gradually, because you're writing basically 5 days a week to 7 days a week, each day has 2 hours, you start to write ahead. You start the final paper like 2 months before the finals. And sometimes it's ridiculous, like how overachieving you can be with your writing schedule, honestly, yeah. And that's what really helped me with my 4.0 GPA, is that I was never behind with my writing. Well, except this semester because I'm planning this wedding. But you get the gist. So you need to establish a morning routine and be consistent in terms of practicing with it. Before we move on to the materials and readings and books, I also want to give you a final tip if you're in college or in graduate school. So if you're struggling with your grade, if you're struggling, like every time you turn in a paper, you think you will get an A and it turned out you get a B. So what you can do is finish that paper 2 or 3 weeks before the deadline and schedule an appointment with your professor. Take your paper and tell the professor I need to schedule either a 30-minute to 1 hour appointment, and take your paper, a hard copy of the paper, go to the professor and read the paper together, ask for feedback, ask for face-to-face feedback, and the professor will tell you, right here I need a transition sentence, right here I need to explain, right here I need to give you specific examples, because your professors probably have to grade 100 people's papers every week or every 2 weeks. So if you're just asking for written feedback, it's actually a lot of work for them. Don't just like submit a paper, get a bad grade, and ask for, hey, can I redo my paper? That is too much to ask because you already did it. You already submitted it. So before, maybe 1 or 2 weeks before the deadline, take your paper, schedule an appointment with your professor, not the writing center tutor, but with the professor who is accepting the paper, and ask for face-to-face advice. So the writing center tutors, they may help you with writing, but they may not be able to help you with the content, and they may not even know the requirement of your professor. So to improve your grade, make sure that you need to do it before the deadline to schedule an appointment with the professor who gave you the assignment. And of course, after you revise based on his or her feedback, you will get a good grade, right? Alright, so now we're going to move on to the books that I recommend. As you know, I'm all about ebooks. So, this is not sponsored by Kindle, but I buy all my books on Kindle if there's a Kindle version. So one of the books I recommend for ESL writer is this one. They Say, I Say. So this book provides you sentence stems in terms of how to quote the books or the research. So this is a really good book to help you build an argument and how to cite the other resources, how to discuss the readings. So this one, for example, they say her point is the art of summary. How do you summarize? How do you quote? How do you respond to the existing research or existing arguments? So it gives you some sentence stems and it gives you explanations in terms of how to use it. Like on one hand, on the other hand, of course many of us already know, but author something contradicts herself at the same time she argues and she also implies. And so this is really, really good, especially if you're practicing or preparing your TOEFL exam or IELTS exam. Like in recent discussions of something, a controversial issue has been whether something, on one hand, some argue that from this perspective, on the other hand, so this one. Okay. This is a really helpful book recommended by one of my colleagues. I will put the link down below. Nothing is sponsored. Okay, and I also have like teaching how to writing, composition if you're interested, but it's not a textbook for writing. This is the book Becoming Academic Writer, and this one is really good because it has 50 exercise for you and then you can do it at home during your 2 hour of writing. So this one I recommend. Another book I really recommend is The Only Academic Phrasebook You Will Ever Need. And this one is really, really good because it gives you 600 examples of academic language. And as you know, ESL writers, second language writers, sometimes we struggle with, yeah, I know, I get the sense, I know the structure, but sometimes I just don't know what language to use. So this one gives you a lot of hands-on things. For example, this one has established a research territory, describing research gaps, general literature review, sample and data collection. So it gives you a lot of things. For example, it gives you a lot of sentence stems right here. So this is very similar to They Say, I Say, but They Say, I Say is good for if you're undergraduate writers, and this is really good for graduate students. So something has received a lot of research attention, something has led to a renewed interest in. So these are all sentence stems for graduate students who write research papers. And if you're a graduate student, you can also look at this one. This is, it doesn't have a Kindle version, so that's why I bought the hard copy. Wasted my paper. So academic writing for graduate students. So this is aiming for graduate student writing. And this is really, really good because it gives you a lot of knowledge about linking words and phrases. For example, cause and effect, sentence connectors, therefore, as a result. So look at this. Right? So this is not just for second language writers, even native speakers found it very helpful. Okay, this one, I'll put the link all down below, and this is not sponsored whatsoever. And also I have other English writing textbook for L2 writers or native writers, such as the Norton Guide, the Norton Guide to Academic Writing, and some of them are actually available for free online, because usually what happens is if they have a newer edition, the earlier edition will become free on the internet. And I'll also put the free books linked down below in the description box. Make sure you check them out. Alright, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this video is helpful for the second language writers just like me. And even if you're a native speaker of English, you're going to college, if you're struggling with the academic writing, these materials and these tips, books, and materials will be very helpful in terms of helping you engage in academic writing. And the materials and the books that I recommend will also be helpful if you are preparing for TOEFL writing exam, IELTS writing exam, and also GRE writing test. Alright, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if this topic interests you, or if there are other topics about studying academics, graduate school and college, and make sure you comment down below so that I know what would be helpful for you, and I'll make videos for that. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for future videos. Alright, and also comment down below if you think this video is helpful or not, and also what are the other topics or what are the other things that you might be interested in watching. Alright, thank you so much again for watching this video. I hope everybody is having a wonderful day. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!